And this I know, he will faithfully stand by President Donald Trump's side as they win this election and change the course of our nation.
Once a harsh critic of President Trump, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance will now be his vice presidential running mate during the next election. 39-year-old Vance is the author of the best-selling memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. It is deeply popular with Trump's base. Sarah Galashan has more on the Republican vice presidential nominee. So, Sarah, a lot of people looking up J.D. Vance. Not, everyone knew his name. Some people certainly did, part of Trump's base. But what more can you tell us about him tonight?
Well, Travis, if you're familiar with that book-turned-movie, Hillbilly Elegy, you might feel like you know J.D. Vance, and to some extent you do, because it is a memoir, so it's his version of his life so far. And it's a compelling account of a childhood spent in poverty, the son of a single mother who was addicted to drugs. He tells the story of overcoming all the traumas that stem from that. And to call it compelling might be an understatement, because it's Ron Howard that purchased the movie rights to that, and Glenn Close and Amy Adams star in this film that was released in 2020. And I want to just play you a little bit of that movie.
I got an interview tomorrow, Mom. Otherwise,
Oh, you know me. I always land on my feet.
I told you that I would do better.
You always say that. You're lying.
I always try.
You got to think about these kids.
What do you think I've been thinking about since I was 18 years old, huh?
Don't make us your excuse, J.D.
Family's the only thing that means a goddamn. You'll learn it.
So he was eventually raised by his grandmother, went on to graduate from high school, and from there he went into the Marine Corps. He served in Iraq as a public affairs officer, and from there graduated from Ohio State University, later attending Yale Law School, and that's where he met his wife, and they now have 3 children together. Now, there are critics of his version, his book, and his film, who say that Vance has stereotyped poverty in the Midwest in America. But from the time that he published in 2016, his star really has steadily risen, not just within the Republican Party. He initially went from venture capitalist to New York Times bestseller. He was a Trump critic at that time in 2016. He publicly called the former president reprehensible and an idiot, but from there, he went on to become an elected senator relatively recently, just in 2022, and he was endorsed at the time by Donald Trump. And now, of course, Travis, today he is on the presidential ticket with President Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump.
It certainly is. Okay, so what do we know about his politics, Sarah?
Well, so from his time in office, public office, not very much, because he hasn't been in office for really very long. He is 39 years old, so it does mean he meets the minimum requirement to run for vice president. You got to be 35 years old to do that in the United States. He is a longtime Republican. His wife, though, a relatively recent convert. She registered just in 2018. His campaign website does list a number of priorities. They are reducing unnecessary spending and inflation, boosting domestic oil and gas production, combating drug and opioid epidemic, and as well ending abortion. He is not supportive of the U.S. involvement in the Ukraine-Russia war, and he also has echoed Donald Trump's attacks on the legitimacy of the 2020 election. He is not just close with Donald Trump, again, one-time critic, now going to share the presidential ticket, but he is also close with the Trump family, in particular the sons, and this is what one had to say about him.
Listen, I think he's lived the epitome of the American dream story. I think he's the guy that's capable of bringing that same success that he was able to have, coming from nothing, coming from Appalachia, and succeeding at a level that no one could possibly fathom. If you've read Hillbilly Elegy, I think it's one of the great books. I read it like when it first came out, before he was even sort of on board with Trump, or believed that Trump could be the guy that can do that.
And most recently, just over the weekend, he tried to place blame on President Joe Biden for the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, basically blaming Democratic rhetoric about how Donald Trump needed to be removed at all costs. So to that end, though, talk about security that is necessary for those who are running in this election. There are evidence already of that security around J.D. Vance now that he is running as the vice presidential candidate.
Okay, Sarah, appreciate that. That is CBC's Sarah Galashan in Vancouver. For more on this, let's bring in our panel now. Matthew Bartlett is a Republican strategist, as well as the co-founder of Darby Field Advisors, and Joel Rubin is a Democratic strategist, as well as the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Obama administration. Thank you both for being here tonight. I want to start with both of you. First off, to get your first impressions when you heard J.D. Vance was the pick. What were your thoughts? Matthew, we'll start with you.
Yeah, good evening, Travis, and hello from Washington. Obviously, Donald Trump, it's been an interesting week in this grudge match between former President Trump and President Biden. A horrific act of an attempted assassination on Saturday. And yes, now today, a vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, the senator from Ohio, a long darling of the MAGA base. It is said that he speaks the same America First policies that Trump abides by, but with an Ivy League accent. He has an incredible career in business. He has an incredible background growing up, again, deploying as a Marine, and now he will serve as the Republican Party's vice president. This is a total break from the establishment. This is a full embrace of Trump and his America First vision. And we will certainly see how JD plays out with the rest of America.
Okay, Joel, first impressions?
Sure. Like Matt says, I think this is a total break, of course, but it also is pretty telling that Donald Trump just on Saturday and into Sunday talked about a new tone that we should have in our politics. And then he picks a person who within seconds of the assassination attempt on Saturday blamed Joe Biden. Completely immature response, incendiary, unnecessary, and out of step with what Donald Trump is saying. So actions speak louder than words. And I do think what we want to see is different politics, but that's not what we're getting. And so in J.D. Vance, we're going to see an attack dog. We're going to see a culture warrior. We're going to see somebody who is pushing a hardcore form of nationalism into our governance. He's someone who said he would have overturned the election in 2020. So that's what we're going to get, and it's going to be a very interesting fight.
I was listening to Van Jones. He called him a scary dude, Matthew, and said that you're talking about a hardening of the Republican Party around a MAGA agenda with a very capable guy. I want to ask you about Project 2025, which a lot of people have been talking right now and which Vance is a supporter of. How do you see that playing out as Trump tries to distance himself from that agenda?
You know, a lot of people have mixed feelings, obviously coming from their partisan corners. I would say that a Trump presidency is not a hypothetical. We have had for years. We saw greater prosperity domestically and greater peace internationally. And I think some people like President Trump and his ideas, but there's a focus on putting American jobs, on putting impoverished Americans, on not getting involved in terms of a kinetic war all over the place. And this is from a soldier. This is a young, new generational figure. As we've seen America overextended abroad for over 20 years now. It's a return to basic core of the party that is showing the will of the voters. Donald Trump has been in this party for the better part of a decade, and you're hard pressed to say that we were better served with policies that sometimes ship jobs overseas and ship soldiers overseas.
Okay, Joel, I wonder what the Democrats are talking about tonight with this pick, and particularly how they think Kamala Harris will take him on, because he has agreed to a debate.
Yeah, I'm not really worried about Kamala Harris taking him on. She's a highly effective arguer and prosecutor. And it's interesting that Matt, with all due respect, doesn't want to defend Project 2025, which wants to strip away a woman's right to choose how to live her own life and control decisions about her body, which wants to turn away from combating climate change, which embraces an economic agenda that lost jobs under Donald Trump. And let's be clear, Joe Biden has had the best job growth in the history of the United States. We have a lower than 4% unemployment now, at a record pace, and a booming stock market. So I think Kamala Harris is going to do just quite well arguing with J.D. Vance about why he wants to take away American rights and return us to an economy that failed under Donald Trump.
I wonder, gentlemen, how much you think this election will be about the culture wars. And Matthew, I'll go to you, and then Joel, you can weigh in.
It's unclear. There are some defining issues in our culture that I think the American people feel strongly about, and certainly Republicans as well. But most importantly, you're looking at two records here. And while Democrats try to use scare tactics, I would urge them to articulate their vision for the country, because it seems that the past 4 years have not gone so well. Affordability issues, international issues. Again, Donald Trump has actually been a moderating force when it comes to the issue of abortion, saying that he's in favor of the prescription abortion pills. So there's a lot to unpack here, but the American people have seen what 4 years could look like. And again, I would hope that Democrats, instead of using their heated rhetoric or even this scare tactic of a Project 2025, would say why exactly what they believe a second term.
I need to give Joel a second to respond to that, and also Joel on the question of culture wars.
Creating a scare tactic. Project 2025 is a product that is being provided to potential leaders of a Trump administration. And we're telling the American people what's in it. And that's what's scary. Look, Donald Trump takes credit for stripping away and killing Roe v. Wade, appointing Supreme Court justices, 3 of them, that is, to do that. And so now he wants to hide that record. And I think what Democrats are going to do is not just reaffirm how Joe Biden pulled us out of COVID, restored our economic competitiveness, and yes, did get us out of international wars. We're not actively fighting. We are supporting our allies in their fight, and that is an incredible achievement. And he brought NATO in, for example, last week, a global coalition of countries supporting the United States and asking for us to do what we've been doing under Joe Biden and hoping that Donald Trump doesn't return. So showing Americans what Project 2025 is not scaring them. It's what's in that project that's scary.
Matthew, I wonder what you think the tone of the former president will be when he speaks later this week. And, as we've been talking throughout this show and the past couple of days since this horrific event that the world witnessed, world leaders, former presidents, current president, calling on, everyone to turn down the temperature. Do you think that we will hear that from the former president when he takes the stage?
Well, it certainly seems so. President Trump, again, we are used to campaign rhetoric. We're used to, a bitterly divided America. What we are not used to is bullets flying at an American presidential event. It is abhorrent. I am so happy to see President Biden addressing our nation, encouraging others to tone down the rhetoric, calling former President Trump and President Trump himself saying that he wants to unite. He wants to, even change some of his speeches. These are all good signals, an appeal to cooler heads, better angels. But I do think President Trump will continue to make his case about what is wrong with our country and what needs to be fixed. Affordability issues, inflation, whether it's grocery store, electricity, housing. It is absolutely getting to the point where it is unaffordable to live, work, and breathe in America. And then internationally, for those that claim that they were the adults in the room, I have to say it's been troubling to see, instability around the world. And we're not sure that President Biden, starting with his withdrawal from Afghanistan, which just demonstrated such global lack of leadership and instability, encouraging more malign actors to be bolder, is really working out well for America. So I think you're going to hopefully see two parties and two candidates articulating a vision for the future. What matters most to Americans when they're home at their dinner table, when they're going to work, when they're looking at life and the future of our country.
Okay, Joel, quick second to respond to that, but also I'm going to give you the last word here. That image of President Trump right after this attempted assassination, holding his fist up, saying fight, 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 is now iconic with the American flag flying over him there. How much has this, and I know we're talking about the Republican National Convention, but how much has this incident changed the Democratic strategy and the Democratic campaign moving forward?
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm very glad that he was just grazed, and I'm very sad that someone was killed. I condemn political violence in all its forms, and like President Biden, believe it has no place in our society. But look, let's be honest about this. What President Trump needs to do is to speak the way going forward he has over the last couple of days. As a Democrat, we're very concerned. This was a mass shooting event. And we've also seen times where President Trump has in the past seemed to glorify violence. He did not harshly condemn the violence on January 6th. He seemed to make fun of Speaker Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, when he was hit in an attack with a hammer. We need to see better. I'm with Matt on let's argue over issues and policies and ideas and plans for the future. That will be enough. And that's the Democratic strategy to your question. It's not only about Trump. This is actually about the American people and about the future that they want. And I believe that Americans, when they go to the ballot box, will look at what's in their best interest and best interest of the country, and hopefully look at those two platforms and make that kind of a decision.
Gentlemen, a lot more to talk about, but we got to run. We'll leave it there for now. We will see both of you back here again at some point soon. Our appreciation to both you, Matthew and Joel. Matthew Bartlett, a Republican strategist, as well as the co-founder of Darby Field Advisors, and Joel Rubin is a Democratic strategist, as well as the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Obama administration.